Alrighty everyone, welcome back. It is now getting closer to the very end of 2022. Before we, of course, we're going to be able to see shows out there like Mando Season 3, the Ahsoka Tano series, and a whole lot more on the horizon as well for 2023 and beyond of what Favreau and Filoni are currently putting together as we speak. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel for future Star Wars updates. Also, by the way guys, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support. It is greatly appreciated. Now, one thing about the new universe between John, George, and Dave, alright, is that they are getting involved very thoroughly with a lot of the Legends lore, coming back to life and reviving those stories from the 1990s and the early 2000s, and how they are going to be able to really re-establish those stories that were approved by George Lucas all those years ago. Now, where we are today is a very important time because everything starting off with The Mandalorian Season 3 is actually being worked on as the new beginning, quote-unquote, of Star Wars to a degree. Basically, it all starts with Mando Season 3, because this is going to be the very first show that John and Dave have 100% control over, and everything else moving ahead from that will be in their power, except for the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew. Those are all being worked on by Kathleen Kennedy, which, by the way, the Acolyte is still going through some trouble. But anyways, looking past all of this, one thing that's very intriguing about the Kenobi TV series, as you all know, it got a lot of high criticism back in May, and all the residual reviews throughout the end of the summer into the early fall left a lot of fans very, kind of in a similar scenario of what happened with the sequel trilogy movies. Now, with, of course, many new Star Wars TV shows currently in the works by Disney and Lucasfilm, creators Favreau and Filoni are getting ready to develop new shows that will be announced next year. Now, it's described that currently both John and Dave are set to work on Kenobi Season 2, as well as George Lucas, that will be treated as a soft reboot. One of the storyboards that are being salvaged from the original Kenobi trilogy and used for the reboot is set to feature Mace Windu in the form of a very important flashback. Now, this flashback is set to focus on Windu's survival after facing Palpatine and how he receives his biomechanical limb. One of the illustrations involves Windu on the table inside of a medical facility with medical droids attaching a mechanical limb to his body. Now, it's planned to be a short sequence but will mirror and reflect the Luke Skywalker medical scene at the very end of Empire. So let me just pause here quickly for a sec. Now, for those of you that are very unaware, everything related to the Kenobi reboot, alright? This soft reboot in a sense, what they are doing is that they are taking all of the storyboards from Stuart Beattie of the Kenobi trilogy that got cancelled, by the way, by Kathleen Kennedy. There's over 500 storyboards, if not more, and they're taking those storyboards and using them for the upcoming second season. That's still in the very early development phase, but it is moving along. We will be learning more about this next year, so keep your eyes open for that as well. So, with Kenobi Season 2 getting a reboot, because it's not going to be called quote-unquote Season 2, they're going to give it a brand new title. It's going to take place after Season 1, but it's not really going to mention many events that took place in the first season, if that makes sense. So, that brings us to the next thing here, is that the scene follows up with Windu leaving the facility and eventually coming across a series of clone troopers, rounding up Jedi that are about to actually strike them down, while they are defenseless and locked up in a similar way Kenobi was in Attack of the Clones on Geonosis when Dooku was interrogating him. Just before they fire is when Windu steps in and begins to take out all the clone troopers and saves the Jedi. This is where Windu gets actually acquainted with the Jedi, where they couldn't believe Windu was alive. This is where Mace begins to tell the Jedi to scatter around Coruscant and to look for any survivors to leave into hiding immediately. Now, this flashback scene is said to be planned to be directed by George Lucas with the help of Favreau and Filoni, so that they can give it a true prequel trilogy tone to it all, accurately, which is why Disney wanted George to come on board of this show. Now, be aware, what they're trying to do here, what they're really trying to achieve, is that throughout each and every Star Wars show, for the most part, what Favreau and Filoni are doing is that they are showing us little glimpses into Order 66. Now, that's another thing that Jon Favreau told Deborah Chow to do in the Kenobi series. He actually told her, you gotta put in an Order 66 scene, or at least a couple of them. You can do what you want with them, but it has to be Order 66 material so that we can actually form a whole story. And that's basically why you see the flashbacks of Order 66 in Kenobi, but also in the Book of Boba Fett to a degree. You know, when Luke is tapping into Grogu's mind, you see the Jedi fending off clone troopers. So, there are a lot of Order 66 flashback scenes planned, not just for Mando 3, and of course the Book of Boba Fett Season 2, and a whole lot of other shows out there, even like Ahsoka, but that it's all going to be implemented as well into this soft reboot of Kenobi to tell a bigger story about what took place after the fall of the Jedi and while the Jedi were falling on Coruscant. So this is a very interesting thing here, because a lot of people out there have always wondered, you know, whatever happened to Mace Windu, really? And now they're making a canon that he survived. They're slowly building this up. They're really trying to get it out there and make it happen. Now, Sam Jackson, back in 2016, he actually begged Lucasfilm, believe it or not, to actually bring him back as Mace Windu, to make a canon that he never really died. And you know what? I respect that, because let's face it, if Darth Maul lived by getting sliced in half, or if Palpatine survived by essence transfer and going into a clone body, who's to say Mace Windu cannot live just by getting struck by Force lightning and thrown out a window? It's very easily possible. So that's why they are taking the older concepts from the Kenobi trilogy and throwing it into this new reboot, so to speak. Now, the other thing that I do want to point out here is how when Mace Windu is getting worked on with this biomechanical arm, these illustration descriptions of these storyboards is actually said to be a parallel to what happens with Luke at the very end of Empire, where you see a medical droid working on his hand, doing a little what appears to be a nerve conduction test. They're testing his reflexes there with a little needle tapping into the synthetic skin. And you're going to get a scene very much like that in the Kenobi reboot, where Mace is going to be getting his own mechanical limb, except it's going to heavily be similar to Anakin's mechanical limb. It's not going to have synthetic skin or anything like that. It's still going to be the bare bones, you know, mechanical limb, so to speak. So, with that being said, guys, I mean, I think that there's a lot of great things on the horizon. The fact that Favreau and Filoni are involved really, you know, gives fans a lot of hope. So, with that being said, guys, you know, drop a comment below. Let me know what you guys have to say about all of this below in the comments. If you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to subscribe and, of course, like this video. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01 if you guys want to go ahead and check me out on there. And I'll catch you guys next time.
From night to moon, we hear them moans again.